need a drink?
Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you. Let me just tell you a little bit about the event, although I think most of you already know. We've called our event Read and Resist, and we've organized it as a sort of satellite event of the Bad and Nasty Not My President's Day nationwide and international day of protest in performance, by performance. It was, I think, less than a month ago, or about a month ago, that I got wind of this through theater colleagues in the U.S. and said, that sounds great. Who has time to organize a performance? But something like literary reading would be a great thing to do. So I had this idea, and then got Elizabeth on board, and she did all the work. So really goes to Elizabeth. I don't know. Do you want to say hi, who you are? For the few people here who don't know you.
I didn't do all the work. We organized with Michelle Rogers, who's an art activist and whose wonderful image is behind you, the resistance, and with Jahan Kajavi, who is donating his time and the space to all of us. So it was the four of us collaborating, and then all of you. And we're just really happy to see so many people.
So welcome again. As you know, we are here to read. We're here to read.
Figure that out.
Basically, sort of speaking personally, because we just can't, and we just can't not, right? I don't know. I've been feeling a little bit ill since about 3 a.m. on November 9th, and I've been sort of cycling through how to not feel that way, feeling a little bit helpless, a little bit hopeless, and saying, yeah, but that's not really a great way to feel. So what do? Right? For those of you who don't know me, I'm a playwright and a historian, a theater historian, and I actually work on fascist Italy. I've been working on fascism and performance for about 20 years. And so there are days that I wake up and say, okay, sort of my studies equip me for reasoning through this thing that's happening. And then most days I go, no, that's not true at all. I mean, yeah, I feel like I get some of the contours and I definitely see the red flags. But I don't necessarily feel like that helps me know what I think we should do, right? I always think of this vignette that I've seen circulated for years now, and it says, it's this one that says, those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it, and those who do know history are doomed to watch others repeat it. And that's sort of the feeling most days. Do we have our first spill of the evening? Yes. All right.
So we're gonna need to kind of maybe move you guys up a little bit more.
If some of you can fit. I'm not sure.
No, that's all right. We'll just create a little more space. But those of you who are standing, we're out of seats. So okay. All right.
We good?
Yeah.
No one's hurt?
Poor ladies have been.
No one's wet? It's fine.
We're sitting down. We're good. All right.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
So that's the thing. And so we're sort of left with this feeling that's not always a good one in the sense that we want to do something. And so we're here tonight to feel a little bit better, but of course not just to make ourselves feel better. I think all of us are here tonight, and a lot of people have written to us with lots of enthusiasm about this event. And I think it's because we just feel like we share something, and that's that we do believe that there is power in knowledge, and we do believe that there is power in art, in the humanities. If we stand up and say no, we'd like to believe that at least that's going to come to something, right? So here we are, standing up, saying no a little bit. I'm getting over an ear infection, so I hope my voice pulls out for you tonight. So we don't have any idea what I'm going to call right now in this moment the T train is going. And I'm calling it the T train because we thought it might be kind of fun if we say a certain name, maybe not at all, or at least as little as possible as we can tonight. So let's do our best not to say that name because it's a pretty awful and horrendous man that we've put in as number 45. But the problem goes beyond him, and the problem is also going to outlive him, and the problem predates him as well, right? Certainly, if we're here, it's because we know that the problems are deep-seated. We know that they're not about one president, they're not about one political party, but they have reached a state of emergency. And I think that's why we're all here. So we don't know what brave new world the T train is taking us into, but I think in the meantime, let's hold on to that belief that we have, that we all share, and the reason that we're here, that is that there is wisdom and there is power in the word, in art, in literature, in reading. So let's keep reading, let's keep writing, then let's read what we read and we write to one another, and let's insist on the power of the humanities, power of language, of history, of freedom of expression. Let's stand up for our right to expression, but also for our responsibility to use that right and to do it well. Let's make good on it. That's why we're here tonight. That's why we've invited all of you. So let's do this even, and especially now, when we see all of the institutions that nurture our education and our expression being cast aside at best, suffocated at worst right now. So tonight I thought we're here because we want to stand up and say that we believe in the humanities. The current administration would do away with the NEA and the NEH and the PBS, and we protest. We believe in freedom of expression. We believe in a free press and the rights and responsibilities of that press to question. But the current administration says that for these actions, the press is our enemy, and we protest. We believe, like Langston Hughes before us, from whom we'll hear a couple times tonight via other voices, these walls oppression builds will have to go. But our SCROTUS plans to build one between us and Mexico, and we protest. We believe, in short, in the inalienable rights that John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and all the other founding fathers wrote of. But the current administration, we protest, right? Of this administration and its POTUS, its Pence, its pipelines, its pussy grabbing, its petulance, its Pruitt, its Putin, we protest. We protest it all. And so, now that we've gotten that off our chests, let's just read and drink and have some fun. Some practical things we need to know. Elizabeth said a little bit. What we're going to do some readers. Hang on, be patient. Please listen while readers are reading. Then we'll take a little break. We'll get some more drinks, get some air. Don't forget to tip our bartender who's donating his time and space. And thank you to Brian who's filming us. And
Thanks, Brian.
And be careful of his cameras.
Thanks for coming.
And thanks for coming. And we'll say hi more and more as the evening goes on.
All right.
I turn over to you.
So, our first reader tonight is Tony Villani. And he can introduce his own pieces. So, Tony, you can just, the camera's here, the mic is there. So.
I just wanted to share a little thing with you because I woke up this morning thinking about Pinocchio, and it's really the first time in my life I never have dreams of Pinocchio, but this morning I woke up with that thought. And I thought that Pinocchio's life would have been very different if they had called his lies alternative facts. So, I'm going to read from Governor Edmund G. Brown Jr.'s State of the State address, delivered just a few weeks ago. California. Out of every 8 Americans live here, and 27% of them, almost 11 million, were born in a foreign land. Millions of Californians have come here from Mexico and 100 other countries, making our state what it is today. Vibrant, even turbulent, and a beacon of hope to the rest of the world. We don't have a Statue of Liberty with its inscription, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." But we do have the Golden Gate, and a spirit of adventure and openness that has welcomed since the gold rush of 1848, one wave of immigration after another. But this morning it is hard for me to keep my thoughts just on California. The recent election and inauguration of a new president have shown deep divisions across America. While no one knows what the new leaders will actually do, there are signs that are disturbing. We have seen the bold assertion of alternative facts. We have heard the blatant attacks on science, familiar signposts of our democracy, truth, civility, working together, have been obscured or swept aside. But in cities across the country, we also witnessed a vast and inspiring fervor that is stirring in the land. Democracy doesn't come from the top. It starts and spreads in the hearts of the people. And in the hearts of Americans, our core principles are as strong as ever. So as we reflect on the state of our state, we should do so in the broader context of our country and its challenges. We must prepare for uncertain times and reaffirm the basic principles that have made California the great exception that it is. First, in California, immigrants are an integral part of who we are and what we've become. They have helped create the wealth and dynamism of this state from the very beginning. I recognize that under the Constitution, federal law is supreme, and that Washington determines immigration policy. But as a state, we can and have had a role to play. California has enacted several protective measures for the undocumented: the Trust Act, lawful driver's licenses, basic employment rights, and non-discriminatory access to higher education. We may be called upon to defend those laws, and defend them we will. And let me be clear, we will defend everybody. Every man, woman, and child who has come here for a better life and has contributed to the well-being of our state. My second point relates to health care. More than any other state, California embraced the Affordable Care Act, and over 5 million people now enjoy its benefits. But that coverage has come with tens of billions of federal dollars. Were any of that to be taken away, our state budget would be directly affected, possibly devastated. That is why I intend to join with other governors, and with you, to do everything we can to protect the health care of our people. Third, our state is known the world over for the actions we have taken to encourage renewable energy and combat climate change. Whatever they do in Washington, they can't change the facts. And the facts are these: the climate is changing, the temperatures are rising, and so are the oceans. Natural habitats everywhere are under increasing stress. The world knows this. 194 countries signed the Paris Agreement to control greenhouse gases. Our own voluntary agreement to accomplish the same goal, the Under 2 MOU, has 165 signatories, representing 1 billion people. We cannot fall back and give it to the climate deniers. The science is clear. The danger is real. We can do much on our own, and we can join with others, other states and provinces and even countries, to stop the dangerous rise in climate pollution. And we will. Fourth is infrastructure. This is a topic where the president has stated his firm intention to build and build big. In his inaugural address, he said, "We will build new roads and highways and bridges and airports and tunnels and railways all across our wonderful nation." And in this we can all work together. Here in Sacramento and in Washington as well, we have roads and tunnels and railroads and even a dam that the president could help us with. And that will create good-paying American jobs. As we face the hard journey ahead, we will have to summon, as Abraham Lincoln said, the better angels of our nature. Above all else, we have to live in the truth. And then there is perseverance. It is not an accident that the sailing ship that brought my great-grandfather to America was named Perseverance. That is exactly what it took to endure the dangerous and uncertain months at sea, sailing from Germany to America. While we now face different challenges, make no mistake, the future is uncertain and dangers abound. Whether it's the threat to our budget, or to undocumented Californians, or to our effort to combat climate change, or even more global threats such as financial meltdown, or a nuclear incident, or a terrorist attack, this is a time which calls out for courage and for perseverance. I promise you both. As the English poet John Donne said almost 400 years ago, no man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. And therefore never sent to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. I'm going to read something from Langston Hughes now. Democracy will not come today, this year, nor ever, through compromise and fear. I have as much right as the other fellow has to stand on my 2 feet and own the land. I tire so of hearing people say, well, let things take their course. Tomorrow's another day. I don't need my freedom when I'm dead. I cannot live on tomorrow's bread. Freedom is a strong seed planted in a great need. I live here too. I want freedom just as you. And I have one last quote by another great writer, James Baldwin. It demands, especially here and now, because we are here and now, a vast amount of passion and some courage to attack the forces which menace everybody's life. The life of everybody on this planet is menaced by, to put it simply, the extraordinary and even willful ignorance of people in high places. If the democratic notion has led us to where we now find ourselves, some kind of radical revision of the democratic notion is needed. Democracy should not mean the leveling of everyone to the lowest common denominator. It should mean the possibility of everyone being able to raise himself to a certain level of excellence. Thank you.
My name is Joan Geller, and this is the first time I've ever read a poem to anyone but myself. The poem is by Aesop Mandelstam, and he was born in the 19th century. And this poem was written for Stalin. It's called the Stalin Epigram. So it has a bit of humor in it. And he later died in the Gulag. And it's short but very, very wonderful, I think. The Stalin Epigram. Our lives no longer feel ground under them. At 10 paces, you can't hear our words. And whenever there's a snatch of talk, it turns to the Kremlin mountaineer. That's Stalin. The 10 thick worms, his fingers, his words like measures of weight, the huge laughing cockroaches on top his lip, the glitter of his boot rims, ringed with the scum of chicken neck bosses, his toys with the tributes of half-men. One whistles, another meows, a third snivels. He pokes his fingers, and he alone goes boom. He forges decrees in a line like horseshoes, one for the groin, one for the forehead, temple, eye. He rolls the executions on his tongue like berries. He wishes he could hug them like big friends from home. Another thing I'd like you to know about Mandelstam is that all his poems were kept by his wife. He was not allowed to write anything, and when they'd see each other, she memorized them. So she also should be very.
She also said when she wrote her memoir that her decision in Stalinist Russia was to scream because silence is the true crime against
That's right.
humanity.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Let's
You know it's standing room only. We love you guys for coming. We hope you can all hear, even if you kind of can't see.
I'm going to read a thing that is the prologue to a novel I'm working on now. It is, maybe it can't happen here, kind of a warning. It takes place in Argentina. For those of you who are younger, there was a dirty war in Argentina between 1978 and 1983 or 4, in which the liberal left-wing government was overthrown by a right-wing government. And the right-wing government decided that they stopped the press, and then they decided to arrest, actually they didn't arrest, they just took all of the left-wing sort of liberal students they could find, people like you guys, and they disappeared. They literally disappeared. Thousands of them, I think 30,000 of them disappeared. Were never seen again. And this prologue to the novel is about the child, sort of one of the disappeared. And the prologue is called The Disappeared, and the novel is called Erasing Rose. That's her name. Between 1986 and 1993, Argentina's right-wing military government conducted the now notorious Dirty War against left-wing political opponents. Known as the Process of National Reorganization, this campaign murdered up to 30,000 Argentine citizens, most of them young, typically university students. Often these people simply disappeared, taken sometimes right off the street, on raids into their homes by secret police driving the ubiquitous Ford Falcons, never to be seen or heard from again. During this period of state terrorism against political dissidents, suspected and actual, the government, in collusion with the Catholic Church of Argentina, and tacitly supported by the government of the United States, took babies from their mothers, being held in secret detention torture centers, and gave them to high-ranking military officers and other officials. Sometimes the same military officers who tortured and murdered the parents of those babies got the baby. Pregnant women were held in, among other clandestine locations, the infamous Navy Mechanics School on luxurious Avenida del Libertador in Buenos Aires, where they were tortured but kept alive long enough to give birth. Some of these tortures were sexually grotesque. If the new adopted parents became impatient, some women were given forced cesareans, then murdered. If necessary, some mothers were allowed to keep their babies long enough to nurse them until the new parents were ready to care for them. Then the babies taken and the mothers killed. A popular method of killing these mothers, as well as other of the disappeared, was to drug them, and toss them alive out of airplanes into the muddy Rio de la Plata of the South Atlantic Ocean. There are an estimated 400 to 500 children of the disappeared who were adopted by the murderers of their parents. Rose was one, but I didn't know that until later. I should mention, by the way, when I said that it was the collusion of the U.S. government, Henry Kissinger, who is probably one of the major unindicted war criminals in America, went twice to Argentina during the Dirty War and told them to hurry up right, to hurry up and get these people out of the way because the Congress was going to meet in a few months and they wouldn't like the moral implications of all these murders. So Henry Kissinger said, you've got to go faster killing all these left-wing liberals. That's something to keep in mind when you think about your government.
Thanks, Don. Sorry, yeah.
Sign that says, please wait until the next meeting is finished
Okay.
because it's a struggle to open the door very, very quietly for people.
Yeah, no, I thought that was implied, but,
I think everybody didn't hear it.
yeah, okay, so, yeah, just, if people come, just wait until we're in between readings. You're on it now. Sam's got it under control now. Okay. And, anybody need to shift? You okay? You all right? All right, okay. Tara.
Okay, so the first one I picked, I'm going to read two poems. My name's Tara Keenan. I run the Writing Center at John Cabot University and teach writing. Okay, so the first one I picked is a poem by a Nobel Prize winner named Wisława Szymborska. And it is it's something that has gotten me through a lot of hard times, as Jahan knows. It's called On Death Without Exaggeration, and it's optimistic. Okay. It can take a joke, find a star, make a bridge. It knows nothing about weaving, mining, farming, building ships, or baking cakes. In our planning for tomorrow, it has the final word, which is always beside the point. It can't even get things done that are part of its trade. Dig a grave, make a coffin, clean up after itself. Preoccupied with killing, it does the job awkwardly, without system or skill, as though each of us were its first kill. Oh, it has triumphs, but look at its countless defeats, missed blows, and repeat attempts. Sometimes it isn't strong enough to swat a fly from the air. Many are the caterpillars that have outcrawled it. All those bulbs, pods, tentacles, fins, tracheae, nuptial plumage, and winter fur show that it has fallen behind with its half-hearted work. Ill will won't help, and even our lending a hand with wars and coups d'etat is so far not enough. Hearts beat inside of eggs. Babies' skeletons grow. Seeds, hard at work, sprout their first tiny pairs of leaves. And sometimes even tall trees fall away. Whoever claims that it's omnipotent is himself living proof that it is not. There's no life that couldn't be immortal, if only for a moment. Death always arrives by that very moment too late. In vain, it tugs at the knob of the invisible door. As far as you've come, can't be undone. Okay, now the next one I picked is called What Teachers Make by Taylor Mali. Considering the war on teachers, I think this is quite an important piece. And of course I want to dedicate it to all my friends here who teach, but more importantly, most importantly, the people who teach the smallest children, because their work is so much harder than ours. Okay, so What Teachers Make. He says the problem with teachers is, what's a kid gonna learn from someone who decided his best option in life is to become a teacher? He reminds the other dinner guests that it's true what they say about teachers, those who can do, those who can't teach. I decide to bite my tongue instead of his, and resist the temptation to remind the dinner guests that it's also true what they say about lawyers. Because we're eating after all, and this is polite conversation. I mean, you're a teacher, Taylor. Be honest, what do you make? And I wish he hadn't said that. I wish he hadn't done that and asked me to be honest. Because you see, I have this policy about honesty and ass-kicking. If you ask for it, then I have to let you have it. You want to know what I make? I make kids work harder than they ever thought they could. I can make a C+ feel like a Congressional Medal of Honor, and an A- feel like a slap in the face. How dare you waste my time with anything less than your best? I make kids sit through 40 minutes of study hall in absolute silence. No, you may not work in groups. No, you may not ask a question. Why won't I let you go to the bathroom? Because you're bored. And you don't really have to go to the bathroom now, do you? I make parents tremble in fear when I call home. Hi, this is Mr. Molly. I hope I haven't caught you at a bad time. I just wanted to talk to you about something about your son's, what he said today. To the biggest bully in the grade, he said, "Leave that kid alone. I still cry sometimes, don't you? It's no big deal." And that was the noblest act of courage I have ever seen. I make parents see their children for who they are and what they can be. You want to know what I make? I make kids wonder. I make them question. I make them criticize. I make them apologize and mean it. I make them write. I make them read. 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 I make them spell definitely beautiful. Definitely beautiful. Definitely beautiful. Over and over and over again until they never misspell either one of those words ever again. I make them show all their work in math. I make them hide all their work in English. I make them understand that if you've got this, then you follow this. And if someone tries to judge you by what you make, then you give them this. Here, let me break it down for you so that you know what I say is true. Teachers make a goddamn difference. Now, what about you?
Can you get out?
Yes, I'm here.
Jigsaw.
Okay, hi, I'm Karen Berman, and I teach architecture at Iowa State University, a little program in Rome. Okay, and I'm going to read a poem by Heather McHugh, and it's titled What He Thought. And it's dedicated to Fabio Doplicher. I'm guessing on the pronunciation of the last name, but I think this is important because I believe he's in the poem. Okay. We were supposed to do a job in Italy, and full of our feeling for ourselves, our sense of being poets from America. We went from Rome to Fano, met the mayor, mulled a couple matters over. What's a cheap date, they asked us. What's a flat drink? Among Italian literati, we could recognize our counterparts. The academic, the apologist, the arrogant, the amorous, the brazen, and the glib. And there was one administrator, the conservative, in suit of regulation gray, who, like a good tour guide, with measured pace and uninflected tone, narrated sights and histories
the hired van hauled us past. Of all, he was the most politic and least poetic, so it seemed. Our last few days in Rome, when all but 3 of the New World bards had flown, I found a book of poems this unprepossessing one had written. It was there in the pensione room, a room he'd recommended, where it must have been abandoned by the German visitor. Was there a bus of them? To whom he had inscribed and dated it a month before. I couldn't read Italian either, so I put the book back into the wardrobe's dark. We last Americans were due to leave tomorrow. For our parting evening, then, our host chose something in a family restaurant, and there we sat and chatted, sat and chewed, till, sensible it was our last big chance to be poetic, make our mark, one of us asked, "What's poetry? Is it the fruits and vegetables and marketplace of Campo dei Fiori, or the statue there?" Because I was the glib one. I identified the answer. Instantly, I didn't have to think. The truth is both. It's both, I blurted out. But that was easy. That was easiest to say. What followed taught me something about difficulty. For our underestimated host spoke out, all of a sudden, with a rising passion, and he said, "The statue represents Giordano Bruno, brought to be burned in the public square because of his offense against authority, which is to say, the church. His crime was his belief. The universe does not revolve around the human being. God is no fixed point or central government, but rather is poured in waves through all things. All things move. If God is not the soul itself, he is the soul of the world." Such was his heresy. The day they brought him forth to die, they feared he might incite the crowd. The man was famous for his eloquence. And so his captors placed upon his face an iron mask in which he could not speak. That's how they burned him. That is how he died, without a word, in front of everyone. And poetry, we'd all put down our forks by now. To listen to the man in gray, he went on softly. Poetry is what he thought but did not say.
Daniela. Thank you so much. Sorry it was so hard to get up here.
I was sitting there before, and then I saw that table back there, and I thought it was a good idea to hide.
Yeah. So just one second, the door is shut.
Hi, my name is Daniela Merlo, and I'll be reading a poem by Kate Tempest. Kate Tempest, I don't know if you know her, she's a British poet, young British poet and rapper. And she was contacted some time ago by the Theatre Royal Bath to do a take on The Tempest by Shakespeare. And basically what this poem is about the power of words and the power of being able to use those words. And so I'm just going to read it. Okay, here we go. So, What We Came After by Kate Tempest. I tell of him that summoned them storms and vengeance, poisoned by the wrath of his remembrance, him that gave language just to impose a sentence, him known as Prospero. He prospers by what he knows. Knowledge it keeps for himself, and it is used for the bad to enslave and to mystify. Know the language that fills up your mouth is imposition, and subject your ambition to a bootless inquisition. Prospero wrong survived and grew wise, fattened on the books he despised when he should have dismissed. That to this it's all relative. Madness for those can't measure it, sadness for those who seek sedative, that gladness for those who know pleasure is all self-constructed, who know how to clutch it. Look, if by your art you have fevered the skies, you need to let the heat within rise and evaporate. If you're the type that sees the seas ties us against you, you will never navigate. I know that language is yours to invest with real meaning. Don't love the oppressor or trust the oppressor, but don't begrudge the oppressor's oppression, because each has to learn their own lesson. Look, if all the people were prophets, we'd profit. We were born with the truth, but we lost it in logic. So find it. Remind yourself of the timeless. You are the planet that bred you. You are the knowledge that fed you. You are the language that led you, so own it. Make it make sense, make it relevant. And never believe that the words of the wise are not your words to read. When you hear the quiet voice of vengeance in your ear, that's when you know that hell is empty and all the devils are here. When your heart is consumed with regret and with fear, that's when you know that hell is empty and all the devils are here. When your tongue can taste shadows and all your friends are shedding tears, that's when you know that hell is empty because all the devils are here. When the boat sails away and you get left on the pier, that's when you know that hell is empty because all the devils are here. When you're trying to understand but the text isn't clear, when the demon jumps up straight, rejecting your spear, when the view is so bleak it starts infecting the seer, that's when you know that hell is empty and all the devils are here. So call me Caliban. They gave me language so I could rain down my curses in verses. I'll take them on word for word. I know the worst is I have to watch my good friends getting caught up in circus. The serpent rehearses his hisses. He makes the valiant vicious. I know now never to waste wishes. So go on then, conjure a storm on the head of your enemy. You will find yourself victim of negative energy. You should extend your empathy, make yourself sensitive. This island was mine for a home. I was free to make rhyme as I roam, and my mind is alone, and I writhe and I moan. I'm the captive of consonants, and I beseech you to be much more confident. We run around nonchalant, dejected, and restless, like, oh, we can't change nothing, though, so why should we try? But we can't change. We can't rampage till we stand strange. We got our hands changed, clutching at freedom. You know, the freedom of mean what you say and say it with meaning. And you need to change your own mind before you try to change the sequence. Live with your energy, not by your reason. This is the last day of my discontented season. No more will I tolerate this greed. It's demeaning. We're needing a breeze through the stifling heat of elitist descriptions of what we can reach. They want you to fear it, to not get too near it, so they can continue pretending they're smarter. Sit still, though. Receive it from self, like Siddhartha. The path is just what we come after. When you hear the quiet voice of vengeance in your ear, that's when you know that hell is empty and all the devils are here. When your heart is consumed with regret and with fear, that's when you know that hell is empty and all the devils are here. When your tongue can taste shadows and all your friends are shedding tears, that's when you know that hell is empty and all the devils are here. When the boat sails away and you get left on the pier, that's when you know that hell is empty because all the devils are here. When you're trying to understand but the text isn't clear, when the demon jumps up straight, rejecting the spear, when the view is so bleak it starts infecting the seer, that's when you know that hell is empty and all the devils are here.
Painting, so it's always, just hold it for a second. Sure. It's always a delight to get out of the studio and actually sing them to people. But I just wanted to start first by saying that I was in New York when the election was happening, and my next door neighbors were a young family of they had like a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old, and they put up little posters on their door outside, you know, and one was like vote Clinton, and it was this big angel, and the next one was Trump is the devil, and it was little devil horns and everything. And from their perspective in New York, like, it was impossible. I told my neighbor the night before the election that it just was impossible that Trump would get elected. The day after, I was working in Columbia University. I was doing an environmental project with all these scientists, and it was like a 2-hour ride up there. And the underground was silent. I was totally silent. The only time it's ever been that silent before was after 9/11, the days after 9/11, where there was nobody speaking. And when I got to the university, they had opened crying rooms for the students, particularly the immigrant students, who were worried about getting sent back. And one of the girls came up to me and she said, "Oh, you're painting today?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I had to come in and I'm devastated, you're devastated, we're all devastated, but I had to paint, because that's all I know." And she looked at me and she said, "Thank you so much." She says, "You know, art goes on." And that's the real truth of all this, is that art goes on. And that is the really beautiful thing about art, is that it feels like the world stops, but we don't. This is a song based on the painting that I was painting, which was about Venus. And it's based on a Syrian refugee woman that I imagine leaving Syria and coming over across the ocean. When she went home, no one was there. All of her life and all of her care in rubble and dust, in rubble and dust, rubble and dust they lay. When she left home, no one was there. Suitcase in her hand, suitcase in her head, full of rubble and dust, rubble and dust, rubble and dust they lay. Running to the water, running to the sea, diving to the waves of humanity. Running to the water, running to the sea, diving to the waves of humanity. When she arrived, Pomona was there. Washed her body there, washed her hair of the rubble and dust, rubble and dust, rubble and dust. She came running to the water, running to the sea, diving to the waves of humanity. Venus is rising, Venus is rising. She will rise again. Venus is rising, Venus is rising. She will rise again. Thanks, guys. The revolution. Thank you so much.
My name is Lauren Sunstein. Work at John Cabot. And so I often use this, this is an excerpt from Frederick Douglass's autobiography, which I often use in my class teaching writing, because it's inevitably kind of shocking, and it's almost embarrassing to admit that, but somehow the idea that a slave writes like this, as you'll hear if you haven't read it, is surprising. It just is. It's beautiful. And he is, in fact, in this section writing about how he learned to read and write. I'm not going to read that much, so you'll have to look for it yourselves. But obviously he was not taught. He had to do it himself. So in this, and it's quite in keeping with the idea of education and the power of words and things that are coming up tonight. So I'm starting with where he is a house slave. And initially he was treated rather well by his mistress, as he says. My mistress was, as I have said, a kind and tender-hearted woman, and in the simplicity of her soul, she commenced, when I first went to live with her, to treat me as she supposed one human being ought to treat another. In entering upon the duties of a slaveholder, she did not seem to perceive that I sustained to her the relation of a mere chattel, and that for her to treat me as a human being was not only wrong, but dangerously so. Slavery proved as injurious to her as it did to me. When I went there, she was a pious, warm, and tender-hearted woman. There was no sorrow or suffering for which she had not a tear. She had bread for the hungry, clothes for the naked, and comfort for every mourner that came within her reach. Slavery soon proved its ability to divest her of these heavenly qualities. Under its influence, the tender heart became stone, and the lamb-like disposition gave way to one of tiger-like fierceness. The first step in her downward course was in her ceasing to instruct me. She now commenced to practice her husband's precepts. She finally became even more violent in her opposition than her husband himself. She was not satisfied with simply doing as well as he had commanded. She seemed anxious to do better. Nothing seemed to make her more angry than to see me with a newspaper. She seemed to think here lay the danger. It's interesting in this context. I have had her rush at me with a face made all up of fury, and snatch from me a newspaper in a manner that fully revealed her apprehension. She was an apt woman, and a little experience soon demonstrated to her satisfaction that education and slavery were incompatible with each other. A line that is, I think, pretty loaded with our new education secretary. The other thing about in that I would like to point out, and it goes on continually in this way, is his ability to be compassionate even in his role as a slave, where he's understanding the effect on her, right, which goes way beyond. So I do want to read one more thing, which is a poem about Frederick Douglass by Robert Hayden, who was the first black African-American poet laureate. And it's called Frederick Douglass. When it is finally ours, this freedom, this liberty, this beautiful and terrible thing, needful to man as air, I'm going to start it. I'm going to do an Adele. Sorry. When it is finally ours, this freedom, this liberty, this beautiful and terrible thing, needful to man as air, usable as earth, when it belongs at last to all, when it is truly instinct, brain matter, diastole, systole, reflex action, when it is finally one, when it is more than the gaudy mumbo-jumbo of politicians, this man, this Douglass, this former slave, this Negro beaten to his knees, exiled, visioning a world where none is lonely, none hunted, alien, this man, superb in love and logic, this man shall be remembered. Oh, not with statues' rhetoric, not with legends and poems and wreaths of bronze alone, but with the lives grown out of his life, the lives fleshing his dream of the beautiful, needful thing